expert either. All right. So, anyways, we're grateful that you're here, Elaine Castaldo, and we're going to hear um, Jesus Ken discussing that right now in the reading, and you're live on YouTube. So let me get the share it up and about. And simple, simple. There we go. And we can discuss this too,
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, here's the
And
mic.
I
And
hope so because um, I think this is, a great discussion point. Plus the fact that people's opinions change over the years. They
yeah,
hear it one way and then suddenly they're surprised, to start believing a different way. Look at
yeah.
C.S. Lewis, right?
Well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
many people have switched their affiliation after a while. So I heard that Dr. David Hawkins at the end, when he was, at the end of his life, was proclaiming Jesus to be his savior. So that was a little different than what his
that's
earlier,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that that's true, but that's what someone had told me they saw a video of it, him in a wheelchair,
Mm.
and him just saying, everything that happened is to the, glory of Jesus. So okay, that makes sense to me. So anyway,
I'm
Miss
still
Castaldo.
believing.
Uh,
All
uh,
right. So this is what we're going to start out with our prayer. Holy Spirit, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I feel that is my prayer for now with this. Um, I really enjoyed Mike's discussion. I came in late, but lesson 63, the light of the world brings peace to every mind through forgiveness. And during the meditation that he just did, I wanted to save it for my time now. I did receive stay grounded in the turmoil, stay grounded in light and love and create a space for wisdom to come in. And um, when Ralphie was, he said the divine presence, and I thought, that's it, create a space, that pause for the divine presence to give us more wisdom, more joy, and to understand how forgiveness is the light of the world, because when we're going through it, we don't feel like um, we're getting any answers sometimes. And somebody was talking last night and they explained it so beautifully. He said he went, and this is Troy Brewer, whose mission is to release all the sexually trafficked and abused children around the world. And he's done a lot. But anyway, he was saying how, he's gone through some really hard times himself. And, of course, he keeps praying, he has strong faith, and he's made mistakes. He says, but when you don't see the progress, you're still in that, little bit of darkness. He says, and sometimes you don't see that answer for years and years and years. And then something will happen and you'll go, wow, okay, this is what that was for. So it's kind of like a healing, but it's not instant. It takes years. So anyway, I'm on the top of page 19, and this is Ken talking. I'll respond to your last point later, but first some additional comments about the nature of the dream. The Course's central metaphysical teaching is that the world of perception and form, what the Hindus refer to as the world of multiplicity, is totally illusionary and is simply a dream in which the Son of God believed he could separate from his creator and source and make a world and self that is the opposite of heaven. It is no different, in fact, The analogy is drawn several times in the Course from our experience at night while we dream. As long as we are asleep, the images we see appear very real to us. The people we interact with, the places we are in, the sounds, the tastes, and tactile stimulation that are part of the dream, all these are experienced as quite real to us while we are asleep and dreaming. And this includes the dream happenings that break the usual laws of time and space. It is only when we awaken from the dream that we become aware that none of what had seemed so tangible and real has really occurred at all. Throughout the events of the dream, we remain safely asleep in our bed. And I know we talked about before lucid dreams, that just seems so real. So that's what he's relating this to. What is referred to in A Course of Miracles as our waking dreams, what we think of as our real lives, are no different. Same content, different form. Thus, we only think we are here, experiencing ourselves as living in a world that was created outside ourselves, existing autonomously and independently of our minds. But in truth, all this is a collective dream in which all the figures, animate and inanimate, regardless of where each falls within what is sometimes called the great chain of being, are equally illusory, just as in a sleeping dream. It is a dream of cosmic proportions, almost inconceivable in its vastness, and yet it remains, after all, simply a dream outside the mind of God, the only reality. Okay, as always, please jump in with comments. This to me was the hardest part of the course to accept, that I'm just here in this dream, that there's no time and space. And I think that's why, you know, some of my relatives felt like this is, um, uh, oh, I can't even think of the name of it, but like a clique where, you're being told something
Like a
that's not
cult.
a cult. Thank you. Yeah, the words don't come anymore. um, a cult, and they stopped because they just couldn't deal with a lot of this. And maybe I'm naive, but I just feel like if it's true, it'll eventually span out. If it's not true, it'll die off. And I can accept only what I can accept at the time. And maybe later on, I'll be able to accept more, maybe not. But I do find that pause to be so valuable. That pause where divine presence, where wisdom can direct instead of listening to that automatic response of the ego. And what's been coming out more and more is, um, if I'm always in the past, then I'm not being present. If I'm always worried about the future, I'm not being present. So if I pause, then I'm being more present. Then I'm allowing myself to receive the wisdom that has to come through. Anybody else want to comment?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I had a hard time figuring out where we were because I didn't have a bookmark over here. I guess
Oh,
I don't know.
sorry.
But anyway, I figured it out anyway. So those who are watching on YouTube probably saw me searching. Um, but yeah, a lot of folks, of course, they think that it's not part of the teachings of Christianity that this world is not real and that this world is not our home. And yet, isn't that pretty much the promise of, if you're faithful, you will go to the real world, which is your real home, and that this world it doesn't even have it has no effect on your eternity. It's just that a lot of religious folks would think that it's exclusive to us. We, the Christians, are the only ones who are going to attain that. And so do the Muslims, and so do, people who think that their way is right. They're going to think that everybody else's way is wrong. But if you recognize that, excuse me, if you recognize that uh, the real world is heaven, and this world that we exist in is just is nothing compared to heaven. Um, and I mean, however you want to look at it, uh, everybody's got to think about afterlife. You know, what's going to happen. And, for me, after life in this world is awakening to a real world that is a real world of uh, pure love and joy. And there can be angels, you can have golden streets, whatever you want to believe, but it doesn't really matter because the point of it is that you will be perfectly happy. And so that's the real world is, in a place where we are perfectly happy. And in our dreams, we are never perfectly happy. It's impossible. So, I mean, that's, why Jesus said, I come to prepare a place for you. We can't be in that place right now because we're so caught up in the dreaming world. But when we wake up from the dreaming world, we are in that place. Anyway, that's what I thought about it. And I see Rafi and Steve both have their hands up.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Ralphie.
Yeah, right now I'm asleep, dreaming that I'm awake, sitting on a couch, participating in a Course in Miracles Zoom session. And that's fine. It's perfectly okay with me because I put it here. I'm the dreamer of the dream. I put it here to help me wake up from the dream. The dream isn't. It isn't real at all, and that's the paradox that makes it work. Makes it real. Only paradoxes are real. So here's this dream that never was. That's helping me wake up from a dream uh, that I think that I dreamed that I put there, and um, and I'm okay with all of that because everything is working for me. The dream is working for me. I put it there. I'm working for me. And it ain't real. And that's okay too. And so, really, I have no problem with any of it. Just let it keep rolling along. And all I got to do is make sure that I wake up from this dream.
Thank you. All right, Steve.
About a year ago, I don't remember exactly, I was soaking in a very large cloth foot tub on the cliff of a place called Esalen Institute in California, right next to Big Sur. And it was in the morning, there was nobody else around, and my head was underwater. I'd been soaking in this pretty hot natural spring water that you can fill up the tub with. I've been there for about an hour, and I decided to sit up and watch a wave coming in, thinking that, oh, maybe I'm like that wave I'm looking at. So I watched the wave and I followed it from a distance. It didn't take my eyes off it. And I just watched it come in closer, closer until it just crashed onto the rocky shore below me that I could see. And it was comforting because I felt like I'm a wave and I don't disappear. I just return to the ocean.
Mm.
I'm pausing because I feel that the wave is not an illusion, it's an expression of the all of possibilities of the ocean. And that I'm just a wave that had a beginning, will have an end, but the end is a joining. And it was wonderful, and it is wonderful. Thank you. I'm complete.
Thank you. What a beautiful visual. Yeah, the ocean, and the ocean just goes on forever and ever, and it's just such a beautiful way of expanding into, all of this. And my biggest thing with all of it is I need the hope that gives us, in knowing that there's a bright future. I want to know that there's something else, you know, um, not that like some people say, oh, you're going to die and go in the ground and that's the end of you. No, that's not the end of my spirit. That's not the end of my soul. So much more is promised. Um,
I don't know anything about what happens to my wave, nor what happens to the drop when it goes back into the ocean. But I do know that the task at hand is right now. There is life. And there is nothing else to contemplate because this is the moment that I have to know. Everything else goes into the realm of belief. There are comforting beliefs, uncomfortable beliefs, but there is a knowing in the now that is not anything to do with a comforting or a discomforting belief. And to know the difference is what my uh, heart is saying. Be here now. And the fact that the wave gets reabsorbed is, I'm going to say, the fact that it gets reabsorbed, it's it's only now that it's real. There is in this wave, in this drop, contains the infinite. Within the drop is the whole ocean. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
I
it's
am the
it's
meeting place of the finite with the infinite right now. And oh, I know what I was going to say. The fact that the wave crashes and gets reabsorbed makes the existence of the wave, the existence of my life. If the wave just kept going and going and going, the wave wouldn't be so worthwhile and rare and urgent to be present. Mortality for me has a gift of really valuing the present. Thank you.
mm, yeah, more and more I realize that now, just to enjoy each day because I just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Exactly. You do not know. And that's
Right.
fine.
And I want to make the best of today. And on top of all of it, when I am in that state of non-judgment and love and light, feeling peace, I'm so much more joyful and happy.
Not only that, but my teacher, he used to say, or he said once, he said, when you're in the present and you have knowledge of the self, what happens to you later doesn't even matter. Thank you. I'm complete.
Mm, yeah, because you know truth and you know that peace. Beautiful. Thank you. All right, continue. So Ken says, I'll return to some of your other points about morality and decisions later in the dialogue, Norris. But suffice it to say, once again, there is no way that a biblical Christian and a student of A Course in Miracles could ever find mutual grounds of agreement when it comes to questions of theology or cosmology. I wonder, at the end, I don't know let me just go back to see when this was copyright. It was copyrighted in 1995, but I wonder when this was actually portions of A Course in Miracles, copyright 1975, and then 1992 again. But I just wonder the changes. So this is what Clarke responds.
Wait, is this Ken Wapnick? No,
Yes, I'm
Ken.
sorry. Yes, did I read? Okay, this is A Course in Miracles and Christianity, a dialogue with Ken Wapnick and W. Norris Clarke, who
Okay,
is,
thank you.
yeah, I'm sorry. I usually say that in the beginning and I got sidetracked. Yeah, so this is why we were saying this was written, in the beginning, I think more. So let's see what Clarke says. Before we leave this topic of creation, I think it is only fair to say something about the different ways in which each position views the problem of evil, in italics. For the difficulty of reconciliating the obvious evil in this present world of ours with the notion of a creation by a good God is one of the main objections of the Course against this central belief of traditional Christianity. As you said earlier, the Course considers the so-called order of this world as really an insane kind of order, with all of its imperfections, diseases, disasters of all kinds, and especially the fierce competition of one species living by devouring others, which is the law throughout the subhuman living world. If God is going to create any world, it must be one that resembles the divine perfections, not one filled with evil. Let us be perfectly honest. The problem of evil is indeed one filled with mystery for our limited human minds, not one possible for us to crack and completely comprehend with our own limited vision of world history and what God is planning for beyond death. But Christian faith can shed considerable light on it, I think. First, the moral evils of the world, deriving from the free evil moral decisions of human beings and their consequences, such as hatred, selfishness, exploiting of others, etc., are our own responsibility and not due to God at all. So I would say this is like free will, who only permits this so as not to override our freedom and remove our possibilities of doing moral good too. Freely given love and service by human beings is such a lofty good that God is willing to run the risk of our free choice of evil instead of good. And this is one of the things that God didn't create all this evil, but he gave us free choice. And unfortunately, pride comes in and evil. Second, much of the physical evil in the world today, such as destruction of the environment, hunger, disease, etc., actually comes from our own fault, our own ignorant, greedy misuse of the world. And it seems God wants us to learn from our own mistakes how to be more responsible stewards of the material world and our own bodies he has entrusted to us. So I always felt like this world is a school for learning, where we have the choices, but hopefully we come to the better choice. And please just interrupt me anytime if you have a comment. But there is no doubt that there is still a great deal of inevitable suffering, disasters, accidents, death built into the structure of a dynamic, evolving material world in which vulnerable, body-bound living beings, either lacking intelligence entirely or of very limited intelligence, are challenged to feel their own way towards higher growth by the unpredictable interplay of fixed natural laws and chance interactions. And I would put into this people that think they're a genius and they think they know better than God, that their way is the right way. If God wishes to try the magnificent experiment of creating such a world that ends with Christ and redeemed, risen, and glorified humanity, God has already created a much more perfect spiritual world, that of the angels or pure spirits, where there is no trace of any of the physical evils of our lowly world. But we have no right to forbid God to stretch his power and wisdom to the limit and make the daring decision to create a world beginning with the lowliest dimension of matter and then evolving upward to be finally inhabited by spirit. Be transformed by it and raised up to eternal blissful union with God himself. God never promises us that we will not be vulnerable or have to suffer along the way, only that he will be with us at every point along the way and take care, in his own way, of those who get hurt, either in this or the next life. We do not really have the right or the wisdom to declare it impossible for God to create any but worlds we consider perfect. And what's coming to me is Job in the Bible, when God says to him, were you here when I created all of this? My ways are not your ways. So Father Clarke continues, there is also the further mystery with human experience bears out. There is also the further mystery which human experience bears out, I think, to all of us who have lived long enough, that somehow the full depth and richness of human character is simply not reached by embodied spirits like us, unless by passing through the challenge, purification, and transformation of suffering. Herein lies the part of the mystery of the cross and the passion of Jesus himself. So I just heard Emmeline Lampert in her satsang talking about how the contrast is how we learn. She was talking that, the collective suffering versus the love and the truth. We have that truth in our hearts. In fact, it was interesting how Troy was saying that our hearts is the third temple, and that's what the Course is saying. The Course is saying God within us. Not that we are God, like that's got to be a clear definition for me, but that I am a child of God whom he loves. But when you're in that contrast, we're experiencing the suffering, she said, to wake up, to recognize the mirror of the truth within, that love. There is, and the Age of the Heart talks about, God imprinted love in our hearts. We're embedded with this love of God, the divinity within. And we are able, when we don't allow pride and false humility to interfere with wisdom, because unfortunately, there's too many ways that we can be fooled. And that's my thing now, that, I just, keep wanting to know the truth because there's so much out there and you just don't know what's really true anymore. Um, I don't know if anybody wants to comment.
Yeah, you know what? There's several places, and I just posted one in the chat where Jesus says that the Holy Spirit teaches us through contrast, and this is from chapter 13. You will not remember change and shift in heaven. You have need of contrast only here. Contrast and differences are necessary teaching aids, for by them you will learn what to avoid and what to seek. When you have learned this, you will find the answer that makes the need for any differences disappear. Truth comes of its own will unto its own. Uh, there's several places Jesus tells us in the Course the Holy Spirit teaches us through contrast. And yes, I agree with this priest who's saying that, the reason that we're allowed even to make this world, and I think it's pretty clear, he's not pointing to um, the uh, the sin of the world as being something that God had anything to do with, but that we decided, we made it up. And we're able to make it up because God gave us free will to say you can do whatever you want, but you cannot hurt yourself. You can do whatever you want, but you cannot destroy the divine nature that you are. And so we're here. Yeah, I think, all these things that seem to be so ungodly, like, the talk about, things. Uh, he's going to talk later here about this higher species killing the lower ones, or there really are no higher or lower species that I can imagine. It's all created by God, even though the world that I see is not the world that God created. The world that I see is the world that I made up in my own mind, that is reflected. I may see a table, but to me, it's something I eat dinner on, or, I've given it all the meaning it has for me. That's what those first early lessons are all about, is that none of this means anything. I'm the one who's given it all of the meaning. And so it's the differences in the meanings that have to disappear. I have to recognize that God's meaning for table um, is, completely unknowable to me, because tables are only necessary because I think I have a body. I think there is a world that requires some place to put your dinner down on, or your laptop, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
There, it's only there because I think I'm not in heaven, and so I have to eat, and you got to kill to eat. And it doesn't matter what you think. You could be a vegan or, whatever. Everything must die in order for me to eat it. So, so I can eat a salad. I can eat uh, bunny rabbit. It doesn't matter. Uh, that it's has to give up its life as a lettuce, or its life as a bunny rabbit, to become its life as a body of a human person. That doesn't mean that it's ascended into humanity, that suddenly that bunny is a person, or that lettuce is a person. There's really not any difference. So anyway, that was kind of a long and scrambled discussion here, but the idea that he was pushing earlier about, it's because we have free will that we have this world. It's because we have free will that we can keep on dreaming. And God's, basically we can dream as long as we want, but it will not be forever, because, eventually we're going to say, hey, I don't want this anymore, and wake up. But I'm so far agreeing with the priest here, maybe not on the specifics the passion of Jesus on the cross and all that business, you know, yeah, that obviously, you know, I hate to take up your time here, but this is cracking
No, no.
because we were watching that show, Young Sheldon. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yes,
But,
my husband watches it.
okay, so at one point in the show, the Sheldon and his sister and his brother all go to like Sunday school or something. They get this idea somehow or the other they have to become Christians. So they they go to Sunday school and they start asking these questions. And the minister is like completely confused about what in the world, you know, I don't have any answers for these questions because you know, if I keep up with uh my belief system as it is, then I will, you know, I can't answer. Uh, and it really is very, very mind-opening. Um, but I'm trying to think of the question that the kid asked. Basically, then it really doesn't matter what we're doing here because, you know, eventually, you know, if it's God and He loves us, you know, He's taking us home anyway. Anyway, it just cracks me up because, you know, common sense will tell you that. But, you know, the church will tell you, no, it's different. You know, Jesus, what happened? And that's what the question they were asking. You know, why would, you know, somebody have to die for me, for God to love me? And the other question, like Carlton Pearson asked, well, if he already died so that God would love me, that means God loves me now and I'm saved now. And nothing else has to happen because, you know, that's already been done. Anyway, I think it's very funny when you start asking these questions. And I appreciate, you know, that we're reading this now. Anyway, thank you,
Yeah,
Lynn. I'll turn it back to
yeah.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I had this wild, not even an idea, just, sometimes you just get these little crazy thoughts. And my thought was, what if this is all just an experiment? Because, God created the angels to be wonderful and they did, they were divided. So maybe this is just a test to see how we're going to respond with free will and see who is actually going to stand the test. Not that it's just a game, that eventually um, we'll all come around to see the love and see that love works so much better. I don't know. But anyway, um, let me get back to Clarke. A brief further word here about the question of how God could allow a world where life and death are woven so closely together and where most living species live, oops, by devouring another in a constant cycle of life through death. I know this bothers the Course a great deal. There is plenty of mystery here, to be sure, but I think there is another way of looking at it than just an insane tale of horror and destruction. Living things below the human level are not persons possessing self-consciousness and freedom. Hence, each individual is not an end in itself like persons, but insubordinated to a larger common good, ultimately for the good of persons. And one could well say that rather than higher species just killing lower ones and so destroying the purpose of the lower ones are in fact fulfilling their purpose by feeding the higher ones. And the constant struggle for survival is in fact the primary trigger behind the whole immense creative evolution of new forms of life in nature. But this question really deserves more time for careful discussion than we can give it here. Even when all the above is said, we must be very honest and admit we cannot give adequate answers in this life by all the searching questions and objectives brought forward by the Course. about the problem of evil in our present world. Wow. And I think, to be very honest, we have to just admit in all avenues that we don't have all the answers. Our Christian faith commits us to believing and trusting that God can somehow work through the allowance of evil to bring a greater good out of the process in the end. Though we ourselves cannot see clearly yet what this will look like in detail. Yeah, we don't know what anything is for, and that's what the Course says. In conclusion, we can only say that we certainly have here two profoundly different ways of looking at and judging the world we live in. In the light of the first article of the Christian Creed, the creation of all that is by God alone, and its basic goodness. So I still feel like God created it and put it all in motion. And giving us power within. Yes, Rafi.
Yeah, I just building on what you said, this entire universe, every event in it has been specifically and divinely designed for our benefit. Everything. There's not one moment that isn't that. If we see something and we react, if I see something and react to it, then I got work to do. I got stuff I need to clear up. I got stuff that needs to be healed, stuff that needs to be released. But if I see it as the truth, then all I have to do is be and let it be itself and realize I am that, because there's no way you can be separate from the infinite, and just let it be. And there is, I don't know how to put it, but there is some kind of an internal comfort in knowing that even if I don't understand it, it's still working for my benefit, because everything else, everything is. And it's been specifically designed by this super intelligent being that we can call God or consciousness or beingness or awareness, whatever you want to call it. You can kind of allude to it. You can't really name it, because we are it. And how much better off could I be than knowing that every moment has been designed in my best interest? In the Course in Miracles, it says, "What could you not accept if, when you realize that everything in the past and the future," you know that phrase. I don't have to explain it to you.
Yeah,
But
it's beautiful. Yeah.
and the heavier I lean on that, and the more I look at it from the correct point of view, uh, it's interesting because the dream keeps getting better and better and better. And my job is to wake up. I'm not trying to make the dream better. It just gets better on its own. But I don't get attached to how much better it gets, because that's an ego trick. My job is still to wake up from it. So this has all been so beautifully illuminating. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I just, one of the other things that Emmeline was talking about is just wake up from the spell. Are you in the past or are you in the future, instead of just being in the now, right now? Yeah. Okay. So Ken Wapnick then talks. He says, again, Norris, we could not agree more on how these two spiritualities do not agree. If I may, I should like to expand on some of the points I made earlier, specifically applying them to this important problem of evil. We can speak of A Course in Miracles as a non-dualistic spirituality, while the Bible presents a dualistic one. I believe this distinction will be helpful in developing our thesis of how radically different these two spiritualities are from each other. In terms of creation, there cannot be both good and evil in the Course's view of reality, because there is only one God. The phenomenon of opposites exists only in the illusory world of perception and matter. which God did not create. And as A Course in Miracles says in the introduction to the text, the opposite of love is fear, but what is all encompassing cannot have no opposite. And so the Course's non-dualistic God of creation is only love, which means that evil does not exist, since there can be nothing but the love of God. So what's coming to me is that God did create the world for good. He says, after 7 days, this is good. However, Ken says, evil, which in A Course in Miracles is equated with the belief in sin and separation from our source, God, most definitely does exist in the dualistic, post-separation world of dreams. But since all this occurs only within the collective and individual dreams of the world, sin and evil cannot and do not truly exist, because only a misthought in a dreaming mind believes it can will in opposition to the will of God and bring this existence a world of multiplicity. Therefore, within his fevered dream of sin, the Son, with capital S, actually believes that he has destroyed the oneness of reality, which he judges to be an evil act deserving only punishment. And that I guess is what he's talking about with the separation. I should also like to emphasize that the mind that is referred to in A Course in Miracles is not the human mind. The mind antedates the making of the world and thus comes before all forms, both animate and inanimate. That is why the Course teaches that all things in the world are equally unreal and that there is no life outside of heaven. While it would take another book to discuss this in depth, it is important to at least to note this because it highlights another important difference. The God of the Bible is most definitely a person, while the God of A Course in Miracles, though spoken of as if he were a person, is in reality totally beyond all such anthropomorphism. Thus, the biblical God takes on very human characteristics and motives, both high and low. And all this is taken to be literally true by the Christian. In the course, on the other hand, the student is asked to understand that these, oh my goodness, that word, anthropomorphism, are metaphorically or symbolic and not to be understood as literally true. So I'm just going to take a moment here. People only know what they know, and they don't know what they don't know. And, yes, they had the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, but they were mere mortals. So, we have to remember that too. I cannot emphasize enough that the God of A Course in Miracles is not a person or a human being, and therefore does not reason or think like one. From the Course's perspective, all such biblical references are anthropomorphic projections, sorry about that, of the ego thought system onto the figure of God. Moreover, to make the point again, evil has no place in a non-dualistic reality, and so God cannot know about it, nor, obviously, react to it. His very non-dualistic being is evil's undoing. His very non-dualistic being is evil's undoing. I think we have made the differences clear in regard to creation. So let us move on to a discussion on the nature of Jesus. Any comments on this?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I see Rafi has his hand up too. It's very interesting because, this is the question that our friend Regina Dawn Akers asked after she read the course and asked for a new interpretation of the teachings. Now, she didn't ask for a new interpretation of the Old Testament because, that's over. Jesus told us that's done. Now I give you a new message that's important to you. And it's true. Everything that's in the Old Testament is, really history and mythology and, all sorts of stories. If you believed any of that stuff, you would most likely be thinking God was a pretty evil person, evil being. But Gina asked, what if, let's give me another interpretation. And that's how we got NTI, was the new interpretation of the New Testament, the teachings of Jesus, which, accurate or not, I don't care. They seem to be pretty much the same through all the books what Jesus taught was completely different than what the Old Testament taught, completely different. So I think maybe if, at the point where maybe Ken was asking these questions, if he had asked, can you give me a reinterpretation of this so that it can make sense? Because it can't, if it's true, and how over the generations we have seen that the teachings of Jesus, the actual teachings of Jesus in the Bible, not the teachings of the church, not the teachings of his interpreters, but the actual things that Jesus said in the Bible were absolutely in complete coherence with A Course in Miracles. There, I don't see any difference at all between what Jesus taught and what A Course in Miracles teaches. So, maybe if he had had that new interpretation, it would have been different. But I'm definitely a Jesus freak, and through the course, Jesus himself said it so many times. It's me, it's me.
Right
I'm
there
the
with
one.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I see Rafi has his hand
All
up.
right. Thank you. Ralphie, go ahead.
Yeah, the examples of the divine omnipresence are constant, and I see them all the time. If someone, a stranger, for instance, is very nice to me, or I'm nice to somebody spontaneously, that's a realization of the divine love that we really are.
Mm,
If my health is perfect, it means that there are no poisons in my mind affecting my body. And there's an example of the power of our infinite being working for me. If my net worth, my financial abundance keeps increasing and increasing and increasing, that's a realization of the unlimited abundance that I really am. It's always there. And it's constant. It's cutting through the dream saying, here I am, and I am
mm.
you. And here's another example of it, and here's another example of it, and here's another example of it. And then all I got to do is, okay, surrender to it completely and let it take over. And it makes waking up to that truth, well, a lot easier. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. I think we're going to stop here. I'm going to leave you with the thought, um, empty me, fill me, and use me. And that's what I think we're all here for. We just want to know the truth, and we just want to be those vessels and the light to just continue doing what we truly believe in righteousness. So, Lord, lead us. And I have this other saying, if it is to be, it's up to thee, Lord. So, with that, thank you so much for all the sharing today. It was a pleasure, and I am learning so much. So, I appreciate all of you.
Thank you so much, Lynn Castaldo. I love you, sister, and I'm so grateful for you. And we will see you next week. Bye, all.